57 years old with $2.5 million saved? Can you actually retire now and stay retired? My name is Justin Kuntz. I'm a certified financial planner and managing director of Pacific Wealth Management. And in this video, I'm going to walk you through the exact framework I use to answer the real question, can I retire at 57 years old? Here's what we'll cover in this video. First, we'll talk about the 57 problem, what most people don't see until it's too late, which is that you're close enough to traditional retirement rules to assume they apply, but early enough that small planning mistakes get amplified for decades. Next, I'll show you why taxes can become your largest expense category at this asset level and how one seemingly normal move at 57 can accidentally lock you into a higher lifetime of taxes. And finally, we'll talk about the wildcard costs that hit early retirees harder. If you're 57 with $2.5 million, I don't start with congratulations. I start with 3 questions. Number 1, what do you need the portfolio to pay you each year after taxes? Not what you spend, not what you budgeted 5 years ago. What needs to reliably hit your checking account? Number 2, how is the $2.5 million actually split up? Pre-tax, Roth, brokerage, cash, maybe a pension, maybe stock compensation. 2 people can both have $2.5 million and have completely different retirement outcomes just because of these account types. Number 3, when do you want income to start? And how smooth does it need to be? Some people want to travel hard from 57 to 65 and then slow down. Others want consistent income forever. Your withdrawal strategy has to match your life, not just a generic rule. And let me make this concrete with a real-world style example. I worked with a couple in their late 50s. They had right around $2.6 million in the bank. At first glance, their spending looked totally reasonable. But when we broke it down, we found 2 issues. Their desired lifestyle required more income in the first 8 years than they actually expected. And almost all their savings were in pre-tax accounts, meaning the after-tax paycheck was going to be a lot smaller than they assumed. And that's the key. You don't retire on a balance. You retire on income. Which brings us to the most overlooked expense for a 57-year-old retiree with $2.5 million, taxes. At this wealth level, taxes stop being a line item and start becoming a strategy problem. You're probably sitting on a large pre-tax balance. And if that's true, your future required distributions can become also large enough to push you into a higher tax bracket later on, even if your lifestyle stays the same. This is one of the weirdest parts of retirement planning. People think their taxes will go down when they stop working. Sometimes they do. But for many high savers, taxes don't go down. They just shift into a different shape. And if you don't shape them on purpose, the government shapes them for you. Here's an example. I had a client who retired in their late 50s and planned to keep income low until Social Security. Sounds pretty smart. But their version of keeping income low was pulling from the wrong accounts, letting pre-tax balances grow untouched, and skipping years where they could have strategically recognized income at lower rates. What happened? Well, their future tax picture got worse, not better. Their plan created a tax bubble later on, exactly when they wanted stability. And at 57, you often have a unique window, years with lower earned income, but plenty of assets. That can create opportunities for tax planning moves that are harder to do once Social Security, pensions, and required distributions stack on top. But, and this is most important, those moves have second-order effects. And the biggest second-order effect for many retirees is healthcare costs, especially the kind that don't show up until later. If you're at 57, you have a gap before Medicare kicks in. That gap isn't just a budgeting issue, it's an income planning issue. Because the way you create income can influence what you pay for in coverage. It can influence whether you qualify for subsidies, or whether you accidentally price yourself out of a reasonable premium zone. This is why I don't love the advice, just take whatever you need from the IRA and call it retirement. At 57, every additional dollar of income can have ripple effects. Your plan needs to coordinate spending with the healthcare reality in front of you. And it's not just the pre-Medicare years. Even after Medicare starts, there's another issue that catches high savers off guard. Because it works on a delay. Here's something you want to know before you retire at 57. Certain Medicare premium increases are based on income from prior years. So you can make what feels like a smart move today, sell an investment, do a large withdrawal, convert a big chunk to Roth, and then 2 years later, you get hit with higher Medicare premiums. People experience it as a surprise, but it's not actually random. It's the system. And at $2.5 million, it's easy to accidentally create income spikes because your small decisions are often big numbers. I'll give you a clean example. A couple retires at 57. At 63, they sell a large position in a brokerage account to simplify and raise cash. They also take a bigger distribution because they want to renovate their house. At 65, they enroll in Medicare. And later, they realize that the premiums are higher than expected. Not because they're wealthy in general, but because of that one spike 2 years prior. This is why retirement planning at 57 can't just be a portfolio projection. It has to be an income timeline. Now, if taxes and healthcare are the hidden expenses, the next threat is the hidden risk, especially if you retire into a rough market. When people ask, can I retire at 57 with $2.5 million bucks? They usually want a single yes or no. But the truth is, the plan works or fails based on how the first 5 years go. If the market is strong early, almost any withdrawal strategy looks smart. If the market is weak early, the wrong strategy can permanently damage the plan, even if markets recover later. This is the sequence of returns risk, and it matters more than people think. Because retirement is when you start pulling from the portfolio instead of adding to it. A 20% decline feels a lot different when you're contributing every month than when you're pulling withdrawals and taking those withdrawals to live. And at $2.5 million, the dollars are not small. Even if you're emotionally calm, the math still matters. So what do we do about it? We don't try to predict the market. We build a structure that gives you options. That might mean building a cash runway, designing a paycheck approach with multiple sources, or setting rules for when you reduce or pause inflation increases. The specific solution depends on your numbers, but the concept is always the same. Don't let a bad early stretch force you into permanent selling at lower prices. And once you start thinking this way, building optionality, the conversation naturally turns into a final piece that decides early retirement success. Not market returns, not even taxes, but behavior. One of the most surprising moments for early retirees is that spending often goes up right after retirement. Not because they're irresponsible, but because they finally have time. Travel becomes real, hobbies become real, helping adult kids becomes real, home projects become real, and suddenly the first 3 to 8 years of retirement become the most expensive years of their life. And this is where $2.5 million can either be plenty or not near enough. Same portfolio, different spending pattern. I had a client who told me we don't spend that much. Then we mapped out what that much actually looked like. With travel, gifting, and a second home plan, their spending wasn't crazy, but it was just higher than the mental estimate. And the difference between those two numbers is the difference between retiring now and waiting 2 more years. So when someone asks me, can I retire at 57? I usually answer with another question. What does retirement look like in years 1 through 10? Because that's where the pressure is. And if we can design that first decade correctly, the rest of the plan gets a lot easier. Now let's pull this together into a simple decision framework you can actually use. If you're 57 with $2.5 million saved, your decision usually lands in one of 3 buckets. Option 1, retire now with a clean income plan. Spending is aligned, account types are workable, you built a bridge for healthcare and market volatility. Option 2, retire later, but for a very specific reason. Not just to be safe, but because delaying solves a particular problem, like increasing guaranteed income, reducing healthcare complexity, or hitting a tax planning window. Or option 3, retire differently. This is the underrated one. Sometimes it's consulting income for 2 years to reduce withdrawals. Sometimes it's adjusting Social Security timing. And sometimes it's changing the order you draw from accounts. The point is this: you don't always need a full stop or full go. You need the version that makes the math and your lifestyle work. And that's why this question is so hard to answer from a distance. 2 57-year-olds can both have $2.5 million, and one can retire easily while the other should wait. Because their income needs, taxes, and account structure are generally very different. So here's the practical takeaway. If you want to know whether you can retire now, you need clarity on your after-tax income target, your account-by-account withdrawal order for the next 8 years, your healthcare plan before Medicare and your income echo after that, and your risk management plan for the first 5 years. And once those are built, the answer usually becomes obvious. If you're 57 with $2.5 million and you're serious about retiring, you don't make the decision based on a general rule. Make it based on a coordinated plan that shows you how income, taxes, healthcare, and market risk all work together. Because that's what determines whether retirement feels confident or consistently uncertain. If you'd like help stress testing your situation, specifically the withdrawal plan, tax picture, or the 57 to 65 healthcare gap, Check out the link in the description to schedule an introductory call. We'll map out what retiring now actually looks like for you and whether the smarter move is now, later, or differently. Thanks for watching.